Hey guys, welcome back to Master Gaming Studios. I'm Craig, and today we're going to cover the Tyranids Secondaries. We've done this before, especially in Warzone Nephilim. I'm going to do a slightly updated video on my opinions of it. Story behind this is that I'm currently preparing for a GT in a few weekends, and this is one of them that I've been going to for 2-3 years now, and I've been just dice rolls away from making it to the top. So I really want to this time see if I can pull it off. So I've been talking with people about playing secondaries and really trying to figure out which ones to do, and that kind of got me thinking, all right, maybe you should do an updated video with what I've been kind of talking about here and brainstorming and planning out. So we will cover most of the secondaries that Tyranids can take, which ones I think are viable, which ones you should build around my plan for secondaries when I play my games. My plan hasn't really shifted, but we'll talk about it just in case you guys want to hear a little bit, because when we do battle reports, I don't necessarily go into great detail about it, though we'll do that now in this video. So if that sounds good, do like and subscribe to stay up to date on all of our content here at Master Gaming Studios. And we have, if you want to help support us a little bit more, thank you members, we have launched a reinforcement tier. It is a $1 tier. Essentially, it's just a thank you. If you appreciate our content, we would appreciate, you know, if you just gave the $1 for a little bit of support. Everything helps, and your name will be at the end of videos along with everybody else under a reinforcement column. So if you choose to do that, thank you, we really appreciate it. Now, with all that out of the way, let's dive into today's video. So like I said, this probably won't be too lengthy of a video, though I say that and I'll probably ramble a lot. We will cover the secondaries. I say which ones are best, but we'll cover all of them. I'll talk about certain ones you have to build around and some tips to building around those, and then my thoughts on the secondaries, how I plan to play secondaries in most games, especially with this tournament that I'm going to in a few weeks. So first, secondaries. There are four-ish, five technically, categories for Tyranid secondaries. We've got the psychic actions, shadow operations, battlefield supremacy, and there are two categories of killy ones, so I just kind of put those all into one just for simplicity's sakes here. Psychic actions are a tough one because there are many armies these days that have something like a 4-up to deny strat. Necrons can sometimes get away with using that. Iron Hands with Space Marines. Khorne has a strat to deny. Things, I'm trying to think. Sisters have like 5-up deny on their entire army. So the ability to deny can get a little frustrating when you're playing with the secondaries, psychic secondaries, though Tyranids don't have many other options, and psychic secondaries are so easy to do. I do like both of them. Psychic ritual is easy, but it kind of has a less payoff as you have to do it every single turn to max it out. But you can be out of line of sight and far away from your opponent to do it, so it's a trade-off there. Psychic interrogation, you only have to do it 3 turns, but you can only get 12 points. You do have to sit in the center of the board to do that one, which does mean you have a higher chance for denies, and your psyker could be in threat range if he's there. So it's there. It's a bug. Shadow operations, these ones are good. Banners is my favorite out of all of these. Most games I play, it's an easy 8+ points. You can really do more, and unless you're getting curb stomped, you probably aren't going to get too many more. R&D, with the change of the lictors and the way R&D has evolved, it's not nearly as easy. Doing it in your table quarters, your home table quarters, is very easy. Doing it in one other table quarter is not that difficult either to get you 8 points. But with a lack of options Tyranids have to get OBSEC units into that back corner, you could use a strat and bring gargoyles in back there or outflank them or whatever, but without doing that, it's hard to get the full 12 points on that one. and it is only 12 points. Spore nodes, again, it's very similar R&D. It's easy to do it twice, 8 points. You have to have dedicated units running at your opponent. So you could do it, but once you do that 8 points, unless you're playing a full horde where you just have units to throw out the window every turn, after 8, it's going to get a little bit difficult. So I lean towards banners, but there are other options out there. Battlefield Supremacy are ones I don't really like to take anymore. I know they've changed them and they're not bad, but I feel like you do have to tailor your armies a bit to these ones in order to really score them. And we'll talk about them more in detail, but Engage being in all the quadrants, again, you could be in 2 of the quadrants for most of the game, but if you fall out of one of those quadrants once, then you're down to 8 points. Being in all 4 quadrants every single round is just pretty tricky with a lot of Tyranid armies, so getting the max 15 is going to be tough. Behind enemy lines, you can get away with much smaller units and more shenanigans to pull that one off. So it's more doable, but you have to tailor your list to that one. Ghillie ones, you guys probably, if you've seen a lot of my videos, know I love Cranial Feasting. Yes, it can be a bit swingy, and yes, it doesn't work against certain armies like Necrons. Cranial Feasting is just not viable against. If you can't do that one, or if you're not playing a melee army, No Prisoners and Bring It Down are also alright. I often take No Prisoners. I like No Prisoners more than Bring It Down because a lot of armies have more infantry than tanks, and you get the bonus points at 50 wounds and at 100 wounds. So we're going to talk about building around these secondaries. So for the psychic ones, I prefer to use single casters when it comes to these. So the Turvagon and Broodlord are my favorite. Turvagon's really my favorite. You can get away with using your Hive Tyrant here or there, or if you're bringing a second Neurothrope, that's also another valid option. But when I'm choosing which ones to pick, I have to look at my opponent. What deny strats do they have? What abilities do they have? If they're like the Sisters and any unit can deny when you're nice and close, like I think there's only 12-inch range, but every unit can deny in a 5-up, I'm not going to take the Ritual because they're going to have units in the center of the board and they're going to be able to deny it over and over again probably. I will probably take the Interrogate because a lot of Sisters players do bring the 3 characters. A lot of them bring a Canoness or Morvenval that are being aggressive up the middle. If they're playing aggressive up the middle, I can keep my Psyker back, stay within a 24-inch bubble, and try to just do it at a distance and nice and reliable. Sure, maybe they get away to deny it a few times, but I'd rather have them deny it a few times and my opponent and my Psyker be safe than deny it a few times and my Psyker is stuck in the middle of the battlefield. Shadow operations, for banners, like I said, I do really like banners. It's easy to do, especially most objectives. You start within range of 2 objectives or at least 1 and you can go get the second one. Putting the 2 banners down right away, and then you just got to know, all right, I got to fight for this banner every turn, as well as maybe you can get a banner on the center one. The reason I do like the banners is that your Gaunts, your Warriors, your Zoanthropes, all of your infantry can do it. So if you have a turn where you have an idle unit of Zoanthropes, there's just nothing they're going to smite, have them raise a banner. It's not going to cost them anything really. R&D is great. You got to need the units in order to pull off the R&D and the Spore nodes. Most of my Tyranid armies don't have the units to pull off Spore nodes. I can do R&D, and if it's an objective where I just think banners is not going to work, or situation banners is not going to work, R&D for an easy 8 points sometimes is just the safer option to go with, so I will play around with that. And if I do, I try to get the objective in my opponent's home field. I try to go for that one first because that'll be the hardest one to do. And if I get it done right away, then I can ignore it and then take my time on my 2 in my home field. And then the last one is kind of a last-ditch effort, turn 5. If I can pull something off, I will, but don't always do that. The 2 for Battlefield Supremacy are interesting to build around. Engage, if you have units like Raveners that are fast, Harpies, because Harpies can still score engage no fronts, So putting the flyer, the harpies in the back, that's a great way to score it. Another one that I really like are Tyrannocytes. If you can have a Tyrannocyte drop in, and then even if they get units out, that's even better. But having that pod in your opponent's area that they have to deal with can sometimes be a pain in the butt for your opponent because they don't want to have to deal with the pod. It's just got a lot of wounds. It's not too tough to take out, but it pulls away firepower from other units, and that's an easy way to get some easy engage points there. Gargoyles are another great unit. They're fast, and if you have a unit of 10, which you have to have at least 10, and they die down to one gargoyle, that one gargoyle can still fly around and hide and score engage points. So it's a good one to take, and a lot of people do take it. Behind enemy lines, though, Parasite and Mortrex is great with. So you could run the Parasite with the Gestation Sac, and you can not drop. Well, you could if you use the strat to pick it up and then the next turn drop it in deployment, or it's so flippin' fast that you just fly it up the board, hide it in a corner, spawn your Ripper Swarms with the Gestation Sac. Now you have 2 units sitting in your opponent's deployment zone, and it's just feeding you 4 points a turn. So if you could do that, that's an easy way to score it. Lictors and Death Leapers are also a kind of a fun unit to put back there and deal with. You could pull off the 8 points maybe with behind enemy lines with the Parasite and Gestation Sac. Your opponent's probably going to realize that it's scoring you points and focus fire it, so careful with that as it is. Really the big thing I want to talk about is my thoughts on secondaries. I can ramble about secondaries all day long, but really I want to talk about how I picture the Tyranid secondaries. So first off, Tyranids are not in a stellar position with secondaries. I think that's, if Tyranids had good secondaries, with the power of their codex, they would still be like, they'd be winning 65% of their games right now. If they had secondaries like Sisters and Necrons, it would be nowhere close to fair. However, the secondaries are probably the biggest limiting factor of the Tyranids, just because they're not easy. They don't have the units, the tricks to easily score them like other armies that have easy secondaries. To work around that, Tyranids are a very lethal army. So I look at this a different way, and maybe what I say here will make sense to you guys. I hope it does. A lot of the secondaries you can score a decent amount of points with in the last 3 turns, even the last 2 turns. Tyranids are lethal. I think of killing my opponent as fast as I can, do as much damage as I can the first 2-3 turns, and then starting that 3rd turn onward, then I'll score my secondaries. So my game plan when I play is turn 1 and 2 is doing the damage, getting me on primaries, positioning me in a way to do as much damage to my opponent where they just struggle to fight back, struggle to score their own points. With banners, you have to remember, you also score not at just the command phase, but the end of the game, no matter if you go first or second. So saving your units and putting them so you can drop a few banners on the final turn or the final 2 turns and rack up a few bonus points there at the end of the game, that's really good. If you can focus on killing your opponent enough so that they don't have units to stop those banners from going up, that's great. And again, you wait till the last couple turns and you can rack up a few last points there. If you're taking Warp Ritual, if you can go out and kill your opponent and make it so turn 3, 4, 5, you cast those psychic actions and maybe they have no way to deny them then. Okay, turn 3, 4, 5, that's 12 points right there if you get it those 3 times. Hopefully I'm not rambling too much and it's making sense. I just think with Tyranid's lack of secondaries, you can't rely like Genestealer Cult on playing the secondary game and winning that way. You have to rely on taking the primary objectives, dealing serious damage to your opponent where you hurt them from scoring primary, hurt them from scoring secondary, and then you just take what secondary points you can at the end of the game, wrap it all up, and hopefully at the end you have just enough points to win. hopefully that all makes sense. Hopefully it's a decent video for you guys. I wanted to communicate this to players who might be struggling with secondaries because they're not perfect on Tyranids, and kind of give the impression of, don't worry about secondaries. Take them, but think about them at the end game. Make sure you're positioning yourself so end game you can do it, and just focus on killing your opponent and taking those primaries. So that's all I got. Hopefully it's useful. Let's start a little conversation down in the comments down below. What secondaries do you take? How do you take them? Maybe there's some tricks and tips that I haven't thought about, and we can help out the Tyranid community as a whole. So thank you guys for watching. You've been great. We'll see you guys next time here at Maelstrom Gaming Studios.